The following program is presented by the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America and is made possible through the generous support of Accorta Therapeutics. Welcome to the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America's educational web video, Making Your Home Work for You, a 3-part video on improving home safety and accessibility. In this program, you'll hear from a leading expert on the important connection between occupational therapy and home modification. You'll hear firsthand from an MS client on changes she's made to her home and how the home has changed her. And you'll take a personally guided tour of a house that blends subtle features of safety and accessibility into a warm, comfortable place that truly feels like home.
When I work with people in their homes, I may work with individuals who have a disability that may affect their energy or their ability to move around or their vision. And so what I look at is what are the things that are important for that person, the things they need to do every day or want to do. And then I look at what their abilities are, what difficulties they say they're having, and then take a look at the environment. What are barriers in the environment, as well as things that can support their performance, and then how they're used to doing the task. We're all creatures of habit, so nobody, wants to jump in and change around the things that they do, but sometimes tweaking the task a little bit, maybe the position the person does it in, or the timing of it can make a difference so that you can regain that balance between the abilities, the fit of the abilities, the environment, and the demands of the task. Home modifications at its most basic are about making your home work for you. Sometimes when I see people, they're having difficulty with doing things and they see it as a personal failing. And instead of really being able to see how the task and the environment play into what they're able to do. Irving Goffman was a sociologist from the 1950s who talked about home being a reflection of the self. And home, it's not a house, it's a home. It's not just a space, it's a place. And, the word home conjures up all kinds of things. It's the place that energizes us. It's the place that reflects us. It's where we're restored. It's where we invite people into our homes so that they know us and know more about us. The things that we have in our homes reflect the things that are important to us. And so when you have a condition like MS that can start changing abilities and presenting challenges, home can feel like a place that's alien, or even where you feel like a prisoner and it makes you unable to do things. And so by focusing on how the features of the home, both the structural features as well as the tools and devices in it, and the demands or the way you do activities in the home, reestablishing that fit so that the person's abilities match those things, and home can stay home for that person for the future. One of the most common symptoms with MS is fatigue and low energy. And that ends up affecting everything that you do, whether it's things around the house, taking care of yourself, being able to go out and go to work or go to school, as well as routine household activities. So energy is a big part of what I look at. And part of it is to look at how to modify activities so that they don't take as much energy. That might mean by tweaking it so that a person can perform an activity sitting down rather than standing, or being able to do parts of an activity spread over time to pace it rather than spending a lot of energy all at one time. Another area is mobility, because people with MS may need to use an assistive device for mobility, so I'm involved a lot of times in recommending the device. But then another bigger part of that is how does that device get incorporated into the things that we do every day? For instance, if a person needs to use a walker or use a scooter, you don't just use the walker or use the scooter. It has to be incorporated into how does this work when you're making your meals? How does it work when you're getting around in your office? How do you vacuum when you're using those kinds of devices? And so I'm involved in recommending what device is the best fit for that person now and over the future, but then also how does that work with the equipment or with the activities. There are other symptoms of MS that aren't always as common, but can certainly come up. Temperature sensitivity, for instance. There's activities that we do that are around areas that tend to be hotter, and that can be a problem because muscles feel weak and fatigue comes on faster. So finding ways to adapt those. Changes in sensation or changes in vision a lot of times come up with MS as well, and particularly with vision, we don't think about how much we use our vision for things, and how, if there are distortions in vision or some loss of vision, that can really make activities not just more difficult and cumbersome, but also riskier as well. So there are modifications sometimes of the task and sometimes adaptations in the environment that can make a difference, so that, again, there's that match between the person's abilities, reducing the risk and enabling them to do the things that they need to do. There are a number of different times where a person might consult an occupational therapist. If there's been an exacerbation of symptoms or maybe some new symptoms, a person may be referred to occupational therapy by their physician, or if they've maybe had a hospitalization as a result of the exacerbation, may be referred after the hospitalization or even through a rehab center. And so in those cases, they may actually be referred to an occupational therapist in a home health agency or in an outpatient center or clinic. In some of those, in home health, the person will come to the home. If they're referred to an outpatient center, that may include a visit to the home as well as the person seeing the occupational therapist at a center or clinic environment. If there's been maybe a more subtle change in abilities, or the person notices some symptoms changing, an individual with MS may initiate a referral on their own. Usually the best thing to do is to consult with the physician or clinic they're a part of, or local resources in their community that are devoted to MS, so that they can get a referral to an OT who particularly focuses in the area of working with folks with MS and is more familiar with the symptoms and the problems associated with MS. And then can arrange to have the person come to the home, or again, it might be visiting that person in the clinic. So that would be another referral. Another one would be when there's not so much a change in symptoms, but where the person is thinking about their environment and maybe wants to make some modifications or do some proactive work so that they can stay in their home anticipating changes that may come about. And again, referrals through a local MS clinic or MS resources in the area are a good idea to find the folks who have the most expertise in doing that. In terms of what the extent of the involvement might be with the occupational therapist, it varies a lot. It could be a one-time assessment with recommendations to follow up. The occupational therapist may be involved for a short period of time, maybe in helping the person to incorporate activities or maybe learn how to use new devices or equipment, or it may be something that's intermittent. If there are skilled people involved, say, to do modifications in the home, the occupational therapist may be involved in consulting with a contractor or remodeler in how those things, how the changes come together so that they work for the person. Generally, occupational therapy is a service that's covered under insurance, and depending on the state that a person lives in, they may have to have a referral from a physician in order to get occupational therapy services. Not all OT services are covered. It depends on the need, so of course a person would want to check their own insurance policy to find out what the coverage criteria are. I can tell you a little bit about what I do when I do a home assessment, and I think this would be pretty consistent with most occupational therapists who do this. I want to go to the person's home and first spend some time interviewing them to find out about their roles, the things that they need to do in the home, and also how their household activities support the things that they do outside of the home, if they're a student, if they're working, if they're a volunteer. And after getting that background information and finding out a little more about what that person sees as difficulties, what are the activities they're having difficulty with and how they're experiencing them, then I would want the individual to sort of walk me through the home And when we get to rooms where they're having difficulties with activities, I would ask them to show me how they're used to doing things, so that I get a sense of what that person-environment interaction is like. From that, I can develop some recommendations based on what's important to the person, and then we can talk about what would be workable for them and what more they expect from me. If there are other people living in the house, of course, it's important to have them involved, because any changes in the environment need to be workable for everybody living in the house. And so that I usually try and involve the individual to start, and then have them bring in the significant other members in the household, so that we can discuss together what the priorities are and what works for everybody involved. That's especially important in homes where there are bathrooms that are going to be shared. Another reason for doing that is because a lot of times when people see modifications in public places, they have a very institutional view of what changes in the environment are like. They may see them in a hospital or a public place, and they've seen big stainless steel grab bars and things like that, and have an expectation that when we're talking about changes in the home, that might be what we're talking about. And so bringing everyone together and using examples, sometimes having pictures, helps so that it assuages concerns about, I don't want my house to look like a hospital, or, I don't want people to see things that make it seem that I have problems that I'm trying to resolve. So that becomes an important part of it too, so that it's understood that modifications are designed to fit in with the existing environment, and certainly so that things fit with the home and not feeling like an institution's being brought into the home. I think one of the misconceptions that comes up sometimes when you talk about home modifications is people immediately think of, ramps and knocking out walls and putting on additions, and that can seem incredibly daunting and expensive. And yet, in general, a lot of times what I refer to in terms of home modifications, or what's needed, are actually things that are much less expensive, sometimes with no cost at all, and much less overwhelming. A lot of times it involves simply rearranging things in the environment. Like I said earlier, we're all creatures of habit, and so we get used to having things a certain way, the way things are arranged in the kitchen or how we store things. And a lot of times we don't think about the energy that's expended in dealing with those things. So rearranging things so that things that are used frequently are stored in an area that doesn't involve a lot of moving around and walking around, particularly in a kitchen, can make a difference. How a room is laid out so that if a person uses a mobility device, that pathways are clear, that there's not a lot of doubling back or having to just be on your feet more than you need to. There are also lots of commercially available items that can be picked up at home improvement stores or things like that are widely available to the public, but can really make a difference, particularly in terms of energy expenditure. So while when you say remote control, most people think about the remote for the TV or the stereo, there are systems and remotes that can be used sometimes in combination with a computer interface, so that you can turn the lights on and off. You could have a little command station next to your bed, and by hitting a switch, you can turn the lights on in the living room, or the lights on in the bathroom, or the outside floodlights on. I worked with a lady who set that up once so that one of those switches controlled her coffee pot in the kitchen. She would set it up the night before, and so when she woke up in the morning, she could hit a button, and by the time she was getting out of bed, her first cup of coffee was brewing. There are remotes for things like turning on fans, things like that. There are any number of commercial devices that are available to extend reach, so that you're not doing as much bending, those kinds of activities. There are all kinds of devices for reducing the manipulation and grasp, demands of activities in the kitchen. There are so many things that involve opening things or having to hold on to them. And so devices that make things easier, I have probably 10 of them held on with magnets to my refrigerator, and I use them all the time. And we don't think about those so much in terms of, a home modification. But like I said, when I was talking earlier, that it's a combination of changing the environment or the tools in the environment so you get that match with a person's abilities. I said earlier that a lot of it has to do with energy. I've had people tell me, oh, well, if I'm standing to do this, that's my exercise. And what I like to respond to that with is that that may be true and it's exercise, but if you have a limited amount of energy, then it's important to think about where you're spending it. If you thought about if you had $1 a day, then you would want to stop and say, okay, where do I have to spend this? Where could I splurge? And where do I need to save it? And for example, in the bathroom, over the course of a day, standing in front of the sink to put on makeup, brush your teeth, shave, you can be standing for as much as 30 minutes a day, just doing those tasks over the course of the day. And you may think of those as exercise, but if you have real limited energy, just standing to do that is taking a significant amount of that daily energy and effort budget. And so by planning for things so that you decide where you're spending the energy and then looking at how to modify the environment or the tasks so that the energy expense is minimized, that allows people to have, instead of having their energy or their lack of energy control them, instead they're controlling where the energy is spent. And like I said, it's the same thing as budgeting your money. You don't want to run out of money before you run out of things you need to spend it on. And in the same way, in terms of reducing or avoiding fatigue or managing problems associated with fatigue, it gives the person the choice of where they want to spend that energy and then where the places are where they can save it. There are a number of devices out there. Again, some of them are commercially available that can help reduce risk and also make it easier if there is a need for assistance to be able to get that. There's been so many changes in technology recently that things that at one time were sort of, gee whiz, wow, you have that in your house, are now pretty common and, like I said, are commercially available. There are devices so that you can activate a phone or use a speakerphone even from across a room so that whether it avoids having to get up and answer the phone or it's calling for a need for assistance, that you can use a speakerphone. We've all seen the commercials on TV, the help I'm falling and I can't get up, that have made people more aware of devices that you can usually wear on a pendant or on a wristband that allow a person to activate a phone or actually contact a call center where they can get assistance. One thing that I want to particularly point out with those, excuse me, is that people a lot of times take those off when they get in the shower thinking they don't want to get them wet. They're designed for the shower, since that can be one of the times when you might need to get assistance. And so having them on all the time is part of knowing that you can do what you need to do in your home or even in your yard, but still be able to call for assistance if it's needed. There are devices that can be hooked into smoke detectors or other kinds of alerts so that you can monitor your home and know what's going on. One example that I've seen that I really love is a remote control for a deadbolt door. We all get used to using remote controls for our cars, and there are times, when you walk in the house and you have your hands full and you think, man, it'd be really nice if I could unlock the door the way I unlock the car door. And so what that deadbolt lock does is, first of all, it means that if you have difficulty getting up or you want to conserve your energy, that instead of having to go to the door and unlock it, you can actually be in another part of the house and be able to lock it or unlock it. That can also be helpful if you may have someone coming in to assist you and don't want to give them a key. They can call from outside, say with their cell phone, and say, I'm here, and you can unlock the door without having to get up and go let them in. And by the same token, when they're leaving, be able to lock the door when they leave. So a lot of those are the kinds of devices that give you more secure, control and security over the premises without having to be moving around the house constantly or checking on things, because the technology gives you that control. Probably the three areas of the home that present the biggest challenges are the bathroom, the kitchen, and entry into the house. The bathroom presents challenges for lots of reasons, probably the first being that it's full of hard, angular furnishings that often are damp or wet and can become slippery. Getting in and out of the shower or the bathtub for a lot of individuals is a challenge, and it can be complicated by the fact that because steam is generated or because of water running, that the temperature can go up in the bathroom. So for a person with temperature sensitivity, there's the added concern that if they are temperature sensitive, that can make the muscles feel weaker and bring on fatigue more quickly. And so I'll want to know, first of all, if the person has a shower or a tub, and what their preferences are for bathing. There are any number of different devices that can be used so the person can sit during a shower, or there are little fancier devices that can actually help lower a person down into a tub if they really want to do a tub bath. Sometimes it may involve changing out a tub for either a shower with a flat entry, basically, so it's easy to step in. Another product that's relatively new on the market is to substitute out for a bathtub that has a door with a gasket where you can actually step into the bathtub. And certainly going along with those would be having a hand shower so that you can control where the water goes and don't have to have water coming right down on your face or head if you're sitting down. Another area is the toilet. Usually the toilet is the lowest seat in the house. And so if there's a problem with mobility or weakness in the legs, it can be difficult to get up from the toilet, but it can also be difficult to be able to sit down on the toilet and be able to control doing that without kind of landing hard. And one of the simplest ways to resolve that is to get a higher toilet. There are two styles there are toilets available in the United States that are called comfort height, which are a little bit higher, and a lot of those are commercially available in home improvement stores. But there are also toilets that are called ADA height because they comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And those are also available for residences. Sometimes they have to be special ordered, but they actually add a couple more inches. They're about 18 inches high. And for most adults, that makes it much easier to get on and off the toilet. And it's also more comfortable to do that as well. There are some other modifications that may be necessary if the person has more significant mobility limitations to get on and off the toilet, but those are two common problems that come up. If a person uses a mobility device, one of the other issues is being able to get in and out of the bathroom and having enough room for the device, whether that device is a walker or a scooter or a wheelchair. And so sometimes those are structural modifications, but sometimes they can be things that are simple, like using what's called an offset hinge so that the door opens a little bit wider, or sometimes it may involve widening a doorway so that it accommodates a larger device. The second area that is often a problem is the kitchen. When you think about it, working in the kitchen involves things that are hot, things that are sharp, things that are heavy, lots of different tools and utensils that involve manipulation and grasping, carrying food items, carrying pots, moving about between the sink and the stove or cooktop and the refrigerator. So there's a lot of complex tasks, and on top of that, there's a certain choreography because you want whatever you're preparing to have all the different food items done at the same time rather than saying, okay, first I'll fix my meat and eat that, and then I'll fix my vegetable and eat that. So there's a lot of complexity there. And so one of the things that I look at, first of all, is what's the energy expenditure? Because even just making a simple sandwich and soup can still mean being on your feet for up to about 20 minutes, and that doesn't necessarily include the cleanup. So looking at where the work surfaces are there clear pathways in between? Can items be rearranged, either cooking utensils or where the plates and drink and flatware are, or where food is stored? For most of us, it's easiest to reach things that are stored between the hips and the shoulders. Above that involves a lot of reaching or sometimes climbing, and below that involves a lot of bending and stooping. So looking at how storage can be rearranged so that things are in that range, and things that are used most often are most convenient. I also look for a seated work area. There's no requirement that says that food tastes better if you stand over the stove. And so having it, or that you stand at the sink when you're chopping. And so having an area where the person can sit to do preparation is important. If a person uses a mobility device and uses the kitchen a lot, or likes to cook, It sometimes can involve more extensive changes like having a cooktop or even a sink and counter that's at a height that's more accessible for a person who uses a scooter or a wheelchair. So there are a number of different things that can be done in the kitchen. The third area is just being able to get in and out of the house. A lot of times when I say that, the first thing people think of are ramps. And that's actually not what I would recommend. In fact, it's usually not something I recommend unless we've exhausted all alternatives. One of the things that can be done is just looking at how the terrain is graded. Obviously, if someone lives on a steep hill, this may not work. But a lot of times, what can be done is changing the slope of the walkway a little bit so that instead of something being relatively flat and then going to steps, you can do some regrading or put in what's called a berm where the earth is built up a little bit so that there's a more gentle slope and then what's called a zero-step entry into the house. So that's one option. In some cases, the person might use an outdoor lift. These are basically very simple elevators that can bring you up about 3 feet, which is a standard height for an entryway off the ground. They can be installed in garages or in carports or even on a porch, and not necessarily a front porch, it might be the back porch. They're much less conspicuous than a ramp. They're easier to operate, and they're helpful for everybody. If you're carrying groceries in, or if you're moving into a house, or if you've got a new piece of furniture, the same kinds of things that make it easier for someone with MS who has limited energy or fatigue can also be helpful for everybody going in and out of the house. Which brings me to a point that I hadn't mentioned, the whole idea of universal design. That phrase or that term refers to designing environments and designing tools so that they are the most useful for people with a wide variety of abilities. And so, for instance, having the entry to the house not have steps and be a gentle grade makes that easier whether you're pushing a baby stroller into the house or you're carrying groceries into the house or you're moving a new chair into the house, and not just something that someone would need because they have a mobility problem. Like I said, ramps sometimes end up being the solution, but they don't necessarily need to be at the front door. And I usually don't recommend that, partly because it advertises that someone in the home may be more vulnerable and may have a disability. A lot of times, another door or even a window that can be converted to an entryway may be closer to ground level and not as conspicuous from the street. Also, if an individual lives in a neighborhood where there's a homeowners association, a lot of times that matters to the homeowners association because they have rules about changes to the appearance of the house. But entries obviously are important because otherwise you can become a prisoner in your house if you can't get in and out easily. Sometimes home modifications do involve having to make structural changes, maybe adding on a room or enlarging a room, or making changes because of entryways or moving from one level of the house to the other. And that can seem really daunting. Usually the first factor involved is the cost and what financial resources an individual has available and what their priorities are for changes. Usually the most important thing to do is to find a contractor or a remodeler who has some experience in making changes like this. The occupational therapist involved may be able to make referrals or know of individuals who do that. A lot of times local resources for people with MS or even the clinic may be aware of folks. There's also a certification that's available from the National Association of Home Builders. It's a voluntary certification. It's called CAPS. And those are individuals who've done some additional training and coursework to be more knowledgeable about modifications for individuals who want to stay in their homes. One of the reasons that you want to find someone with experience in this for residential applications is because there are some contractors out there and sometimes individual homeowners who are under the mistaken assumption that making changes like this have to comply with the standards associated with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that's not true. The Americans with Disabilities Act was developed to govern public places, whether they're public buildings, offices, government buildings, things like that. and there are a set of rules or standards so that environments work for the most people possible. They don't apply to residences. Changes do need to meet local codes, but what needs to work in your home are things that meet code and work for you. And so it's important to get someone who understands that difference and doesn't try to bring in a public or institutional standard into a residential application. One of the most important things after some names are identified is to meet potential contractors or builders and get references, no matter who's recommended them, to ask for references from individuals where they've done similar modifications and talk to those folks to find out how satisfied they were or if there are any problems. The next step then would be looking at what the budget is available and what are the have-tos and what are the if we can kind of modifications and working from there. A lot of times people will get building or remodeling loans or sometimes do like a second mortgage on their house depending on what the costs are to do that. There really aren't a lot of funding sources available for doing significant remodels. But like I said, a lot of times it's working first and saying what can be done with the existing environment that works for the person so that when they're looking at significant changes to their home, that they're putting their financial resources behind things that are really significant and are going to support them being able to stay in their home for an indefinite period of time. Sometimes an individual that's considering home modifications may have access or an offer of assistance from faith communities or volunteer groups in the community, civic groups who may be able to help with funding or may provide volunteer labor to do those things. What's important is to find out or to get support first from someone who has the appropriate credentials or licenses to determine and design what those modifications will be. Sometimes those organizations have skilled tradespeople like contractors who are part of it, who are volunteers. You still want to know that the person has the appropriate credentials. And what's also important is to make sure that if there are permits or inspections involved, that those are obtained so that whatever the local jurisdiction is knows that the modifications that are made have met their requirements. There are a lot of different organizations that do things like build ramps or who can make some minor modifications in the home. And again, the caution that I mentioned earlier, that ramps are like I said, too often, the first solution that people think of. So sometimes those groups need to be introduced to the idea that there are other ways to make the entrance to a home accessible and workable without having a ramp that sticks off of somebody's front porch or front door out into the middle of the yard. I think one of the things that's important for individuals and their families to consider when they're looking at the cost of modifications is how those costs are being borne now and in the future if the modifications aren't made. It's very easy to look at what the dollar cost may be for doing particularly structural modifications and think, oh, this just isn't workable. But it's easy to miss what that means in terms of costs over time if it's not done. For example, if an individual needs modifications in the bathroom that make it easier for them to bathe or shower or be able to use the toilet, it can seem expensive, but what happens if those modifications aren't made? Does it mean that the person has to do a sponge bath because they're not able to get into the tub or shower or there's significant risk? Does it mean that a family member has to be present to help them, which means that person, that changes the dynamic of that relationship when you have to have somebody do that. And in addition, it may mean that that family member's time is taken away from work, from other responsibilities to do that. If you needed to hire someone to do that, and there are certainly services in the community that do that, nationally the cost to pay for that is anywhere between $20 and $30 an hour, and that adds up very quickly. And so that's a way to look at what is it costing in terms of the cost to the family and in terms of changes in family dynamics and relationships, but what does it mean in terms of what the person has to give up or what family or other supports have to either give up or put into it so that that task can still be done. And I think that's a helpful way to look at how home modifications are an investment. Because, like I said, a lot of modifications can be done easily under $1,000. There's certainly others that can cost significantly more than that. But when you look at what it costs for a family member to cut back on work hours, or what it costs to bring assistance into the home to accomplish those things, or what the personal cost is to the individual to have to give up those activities, it starts to put it into perspective in terms of what you're actually investing in when you do home modifications and where those dollars bring a result over time. I think for an individual who might be thinking about home modifications, or they've heard the term and they want to know more about it, it really does come down to making your home work for you. It's very easy to think about the things that you do or don't do, or things that you're feeling you might have to give up, either because they feel risky, or because they're just too difficult, or because it feels like if you do that, then I don't have energy left to do anything else. That starts the conversation, and to step away from feeling like it's a personal failing, or if my abilities change, I have to give things up, and instead say, what makes it work so that regardless of what my abilities are, my home works for me and I can continue to do the things that I need to do. Once that thought settles, I think it's a lot easier to be open to what kind of modifications are out there and what can be done so that your home works for you and continues to support you for an indefinite period of time.
My previous home had a lot of stairs. It exacted a lot of energy from me in that I could open the door and it was a good 20 feet until I could reach something that to get a glass of water, to run to the bathroom or whatever. It was just not conducive to living with a slowly progressing walking disability. When I first saw this house on the internet, it held a certain amount of charm for me, and I wasn't quite sure why that was. When I got here to be able to see it in person, the first thing that struck me was that there was no step to get into the front door, and I thought that was much easier for me because I was used to climbing so many stairs to enter my last place. I walked through the house, and I liked the layout of the kitchen and the living room. And the house, as you notice, goes in a circle. When I got to the master bathroom, through the master bedroom, I noticed that the sink was a little bit higher, which kind of struck me as being pretty convenient for me to get makeup on. The toilet was a little bit higher, which meant that I wouldn't have to struggle so much to stand up. But when they pulled back the shower curtain and I saw the grab bars and the easy entry tub with like almost zero clearance, I got out my checkbook. This was the home. I just knew it was sold. Every door in this house has a lever in place of a doorknob, which is very, very handy. You can open it with your elbow, actually, if your hands are full, if you're lucky enough to have your hands full. Every doorway is oversized, which I find to be especially convenient if it's a really bad day and I'm using a walker or I need to have my scooter in the house. One of the features that I particularly like about this house is that the electrical outlets are higher than I think normal outlets would be, and I find that it's very easy for me to access them. If I'm sitting in a chair and need to plug something in, I don't feel like I need to bend all the way over and risk tipping over to plug in any appliance. The master bathroom has a unique feature in that it also has, I guess you would call it a back door, which makes the room accessible within 5 feet of the front entry door. So if there's a little bit of urgency going on, as sometimes happens with people with MS, the bathroom is right there, and that door generally just swings right open as you get to it. So that was another selling feature as well, that I didn't need to walk through the entire house to access the bathroom. The master bathroom is about 4 steps from the master bedroom, which is amazingly convenient in the middle of the night. One of the other things that really attracted me to that bedroom was the size of the master closet. Now, that's every woman's dream, but this closet had an especially wide door, which I realized that perhaps for future use would accommodate either a scooter or a wheelchair, and that 2 of the racks for clothing were at a particularly lower level, which is very convenient now, but will also come in handy in the event that I ever need some sort of mobility device to get in there. One of the things that I brought into the bedroom was a wrought iron or a curved iron headboard. I realized just about the time that I moved to this house that getting up out of bed was starting to get more and more difficult, and I really am not a fan of hanging hoists from the ceiling. So when I replaced the headboard, I chose this particular style because it enables me to grab onto it to pull myself up. So therefore, it's doing double duty. Another thing that is very convenient is that the ceiling fan and the ceiling light are both controlled by a remote control, and that really just makes life a lot easier if you're reading in bed and just feel it's time to turn in. One of my favorite rooms in this house, like all women, I love my kitchen. Okay, when I first moved here, I bought a small table and 2 chairs that I thought fit perfectly in the little alcove in front of the plate glass window. And there it sat for 3 years. And I would sit there in the morning and watch the world go by until it was time to start my day. Recently, I had the kitchen painted. And the painter, in order to access the window area, moved the table and chairs to the center of the room. When he was finished and he went to put them back, I realized that it really made more sense to have the table in the center of the room because it provided me with so much more counter space, which, as we all know, is invaluable. So I asked him to leave it there, and it's been there ever since. I have found now that I can collect ingredients for recipes right on the table, close to the stove or the oven. And its most valuable feature for me, being in the center of the room, is that when I empty the dishwasher, I have a place to put the dishes to whatever side of the kitchen they belong. So it facilitates that little chore, which every woman hates. And it has really proved to be quite beneficial. And thank you to Mr. Painter. My kitchen floor is a linoleum floor, but it is a plain linoleum floor. I've found the hard way that no wax floors are very slippery, and they're beautiful. They're very shiny, but by the same token, they are very slippery. If you have a walking impairment, walking on them in socks is, you may as well just sit down because you're going to fall. And if they get wet, and you're using any kind of a walking aid, such as a cane or a walker, that's going to slip out from under you. I've learned this stuff the hard way. I have a regular linoleum floor, and there's no waxing done at all. My favorite coffee cup is one that I got at a craft fair, many, many years ago. And it has a particular handle known as a D handle, and it's basically shaped in the form of a D, so it allows you to hold 4 fingers, to hold the coffee cup with 4 fingers, and therefore you get a much more secure grip than you would with, say, a C handle that might only allow you to keep 3 fingers to hold the coffee cup. The other thing that I use is any kind of appliance that has a soft handle, such as a can opener with a soft handle or a jar opener. I find them easier to grip because sometimes my grip isn't as strong as it used to be, and they just seem to feel more secure in my hands. The newest tool in my arsenal of things to help me with is a reacher. This has been invaluable in pulling laundry from the dryer, and also taking cereal boxes down from a rather high shelf. It doesn't fall on the floor anymore. A real energy saver that I learned from a friend of mine is to cook once and eat twice. Basically what that means is to prepare double portions of food, reserving one for another meal. either by freezing it or just refrigerating it and eating it the night after next, so that you're not eating the same thing night after night. I found that this saves not only energy, but a great deal of time. Because my walking is somewhat slower than the average person's, getting to the phone before a machine or a voicemail picks up can be a little bit of a challenge. I found that by having as many phones as possible really helps me out. This small house has 7 phones in it, and I haven't missed a phone call in a very long time. I also have 2 lamps in 2 separate rooms on timers. It helps me from having to negotiate in the dark. If I'm in one room and suddenly the sun sets and I need to get into another room, that helps a lot. And I also have kept or keep a flashlight in every room. In the living room, it's under the couch so that if I'm sitting there and the lights go out, I know where it is. The guest room has one. Even the bathrooms have them. I think clutter is probably everybody's one problem. In one form or another, there are pack rats and there are just people who won't throw out the junk mail. I fall somewhere in the middle. But I have found, and unfortunately learned the hard way, that I need to keep all my pathways clear, whether I'm using my cane or trying to maneuver on my feet or using my walker. My clutter now has been relegated to 1 chair and 1 pile of magazines. Because it's too dangerous to have it any other way. In my subdivision, mailboxes are on posts at the street to make things easier for the mail people. Because of my disability, I'm entitled to have my mail delivered directly to a mailbox on my house. I've placed that mailbox there, and my mail person and I have become very good friends. She happily delivers it, and it only required a letter to the postmaster. Walking any distance for me becomes not only difficult, it becomes painful. So I've learned to rely on not only my scooter, but the electric carts that are provided by most of the stores. It just has made an incredible difference in what I'm able to accomplish in one day, and it's a great energy-saving tool. Living with MS in your existing home doesn't need to be a challenge. You may need to learn to do things differently. I certainly did. It's not about what you can't do anymore. It's about what you can do, but you do differently. I really believe that with MS, even now, I can still do everything I could do prior to my diagnosis. I just do it differently. And that would be my key advice to anyone with that. Just learn to, if you can't do it the way you did it, learn to do it differently.
Barbara, I heard you found a house that was great, really worked for you. I'd really like to see some of the features. Can you show me around?
I'd love to.
Okay. One thing I really like in this bathroom is some of the features about this door. It's got a kick plate at the bottom, so if you came in the bathroom with your scooter, you wouldn't damage it. You've also got the lever on the door, making it easy to open and close. The door is also wider. It's much wider than a regular bathroom door, so you've got the room to come in your scooter. And because the door opens out, it doesn't end up taking space once you're in the bathroom. One of the other features I noticed inside the bathroom is that you've got a linen closet right next to the sink so that your linens are easily accessible and you don't have to go to another area of the house to get them. I like that this bathroom has 2 doors. It means that you can access it from 2 different areas of the house, but it also means that when you come in here with your scooter, you can come in one door and go out the other. So you don't have to turn or try and maneuver the scooter to get out the same door that you came in. Barbara, could you tell me a little more about what you like about this room, say over here around the sink area?
Well, the sink is the same height as a kitchen counter would be, which makes it much easier to, say, wash my face, that there's not terribly much bending that needs to be done that would cause me to lose my balance. The same goes for brushing my teeth. Things that are counter height are easier for me to grab, such as makeup remover or toothpaste or anything like that.
Okay. You know, two of the other things that I notice here that I think probably are helpful as well. One is that the mirror starts right at the counter height and goes up. So if you were sitting here, either on your scooter or even on a chair, you can still see your reflection. It's not just for standing. And the other thing is, because this is a vanity, it has that additional stability. So even if you're leaning on it or leaning in to get close to the mirror, you've got storage down below that's accessible, and you've got a real stable sink. It's not just a sink attached to the wall.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out.
Tell me about, is there anything unusual about the toilet?
It's a little bit higher than what you'd find in the standard home, and I like that because I don't always have control over my muscles when I go to sit. Mm-hmm. It's higher. It's about chair height, I would think, and kind of prevents me from toppling from one side to the other.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And makes it easier to get up.
Oh, much easier to get up. Yes, definitely.
I'm interested in the shower here as well. It looks like you have a lot going on there that works for you. Tell me about it.
Oh, there's so much that works for me. First of all, the lip, which you couldn't call it a step. It's more of a lip to get in, is very low. And I'm actually, even with a little bit of a walking impairment, able to get in almost as a normal person would. Mm-hmm. The grab bars are really what sold this house, I think. They were pre-installed, and they come in very handy for balance. Mm-hmm. And even lifting myself up off the shower chair if I should choose to use that. And the other thing that I find amazingly helpful are the two shelves where I can keep shampoos and soaps and lotions and potions and things. Okay. That helps a lot. And of course, when I use the chair, using the handheld shower is a big help as well.
You know, one thing I like about that style of hand shower is when the shower is being shared with multiple people, that allows anyone else who wants to use it as a regular shower to do that. They don't have to hold on to it. Yes. But when you're sitting down, you can take it down and use the hand shower. The other thing is, it looks like this is in the same space that a tub would be in. So this whole unit is a spot where if someone wanted to switch out a tub for a shower, this kind of unit would fit in the space that a tub would be in.
Yes, it would. In other units in this development, it is in fact a tub.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, how about if we move on? I'd like you to tell me a little bit more about the rest of the house.
Okay.
Barbara, tell me about your bedroom. What works well for you in here?
One of the things that works very well for me in here is this wrought iron headboard. It enables me in the morning to pull myself up out of bed without having a ceiling hoist. And one of my very favorite features is the fact that I have this remote control fan that I can use just by pushing a button, if you will, and that really works well. And the light is also attached to this remote. My very best favorite feature, though, has to be the fact that the bathroom is only 2 steps from my bed. It really is very convenient and very handy, I have to say.
Okay. You know, I noticed over here a couple things that I really like about your closet.
Oh, thank you.
That, first of all, that it's very accessible. You've got the wide door, again, with the lever, and you've got a lot of space in here. So you could actually scoot in here even in your scooter. And I noticed that you've got closet or shelves and hanger bars at a number of different heights so that things are accessible whether you're sitting down or whether you're standing.
Yes, and I've actually ridden my scooter in there and used it, taken advantage of that feature. It's a really wonderful thing to have.
Makes sense. Barbara, one of the things I like about the setup you have here in your kitchen is this pass-through, so that when you're preparing food and you want to have it in here in your dining area, you can stage it here on the table and then up on this counter and then come around and move it to the table, so you never have to carry things while you're moving about.
That's very true. One of my favorite things is the placement of this table, just along those same lines. This table used to be flush up against the window. And when I had a painter in recently, he moved it to the center of the room just to make room for himself. And I told him not to move it back because I realized how much more functional it would be for me here, where it is, gathering ingredients for a recipe, or even sitting down with a cutting board and chopping things to use in cooking. Also, when cooking, a lot of times things say remove from heat, And this table with a trivet is really the best thing for that. One other thing that is very convenient about having the table here is the fact that when I unload the dishwasher, it serves as sort of a go-between point. Items that go to the left get stacked on the left of the table. Items that go on the right get stacked on the right of the table. And it just saves me steps and energy for when I have to put things away. It's really a great tool.
Barbara, this is such a great house. It has so many features that work for you. A lot of them are real subtle, but they really make a difference. Thank you so much for showing me your wonderful home.
Oh, thank you. I love it too.
Yeah.
MSAA would like to thank Carol Siebert and Barbara for their valuable contribution to this program, and Accorda Therapeutics for their support.